could this mean for Mr. Johnson's leadership campaign?
Well, the first thing you have to say is the timing could hardly be more damaging, given that we are now in a leadership campaign in which Mr. Johnson is widely seen as the favourite, and yet even before he's got out the blocks to formally launch his campaign, set out his ideas, the headlines are all going to be about the fact he's now facing a court case with, at the end of the day, a potential prison sentence. The second thing, obviously, about it is the massive distraction it is for Team Johnson. Here they are trying to hone their message, and yet they are now going to have to spend quite a bit of time, I would imagine, trying to dampen down the story and come up with a credible riposte to it. And it does open up really the extraordinary potential juxtaposition of Mr. Johnson appearing in court, and he himself will have to appear in court, appearing in court at precisely the same time as he is appealing to, yes, the Tory party, but also the nation to trust him to become the next Prime Minister. And both those processes will be going on at precisely the same time. And the last thing which seems to me is inevitably it will be used by his critics, and I expect will reignite the question marks about the character question, about Mr. Johnson's character, because we know throughout his political career he has, faced all sorts of scrapes, and the criticism has come, from his own side. Michael Howard sacked him. Michael Gove, who was leading his leadership campaign last time, decided that he just didn't think he was a fit person, and in effect brought his campaign to an end by saying he could not support him. It seems to me that although this is, just a summons, it's not a verdict, the simple fact this case is now going ahead will reignite those character questions and will be used by Mr. Johnson's critics.
And I guess more broadly, Norman, politicians will look at this and consider that, if a private individual wants to crowdfund a case against an MP, then it can lead to court like this one is.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Johnson's allies, and we've yet to hear from his team, I think they will be issuing a statement, but are just looking at the sort of the legal parameters of what they can say. I'm sure those around Mr. Johnson will just say, well, this is, just people who are bitterly opposed to the Brexit referendum, seem to cause as much damage as possible. Indeed, if you look at the court papers, the judge actually points out that Mr. Johnson's team argued that this case was being brought to secure as much publicity as possible, presumably to damage the case for Brexit and to damage Mr. Johnson. Now, he ruled that there was a case to answer and that the allegations were not vexatious. But I suspect there will be quite a few people at Westminster who think, well, this is the cut and thrust of politics. And if you're going to force politicians to potentially face legal action for every set of statistics they use, then you are really going to severely constrain political argument.